Hallo zusammen, welcome to a new video for the A1 level of Alemán sin licencia, German without license. In this video, we will talk about the connectors and we will start with the main clause connectors. In this context, we will start with 4 of them. We will start with und, oder, aber, denn. Okay, the translation you have on the right hand side, und, and, oder, or, aber, but, then, because. Okay, let's have a look how they are working. So a connector means that we can connect two sentences and integrate them, so two clauses, and we can integrate them in one total sentence. Okay, means like I told you all the time that in one sentence you just can use one conjugated verb. That's correct. In one clause you just can use one conjugated verb. If you want to use more, you have to use a connector. Okay, so that you can connect two clauses in our overall sentence. Okay, so if we would have, for example, the two sentences, ich koche eine Suppe, I'm cooking a soup, and ich höre Radio, I'm listening to the radio. So we have in the first one a conjugated verb kochen, and in the second one we have the conjugated verb hören. If we want to connect them now, we can use, for example, the connector und, okay, and. So we could say, ich koche eine Suppe und ich höre Radio. I'm cooking a soup and I'm listening to the radio. That way we have two clauses, and in each clause we have a conjugated verb. Okay, so we don't need a dot in between them. Instead, we use the connector in between. You can see the main clause connectors und, oder, aber, denn have the effect that the order stays the same. At the A2 level, you will learn the subordinate clause connectors. They are changing the order. That's why at the A1 level, you start with the main clause connectors because und, oder, aber, denn has no influence on the order. Okay, the order stays the same. So the basic order would be first position subject, second position the conjugated verb. Okay, stays the same. Okay, that's why the main clause connectors are the easiest one. Important, in front of und, we use never a comma in German. Okay, you will not use a comma in front of und. So you have basically the same order, subject first position, verb second position, and after und the same. Subject first position, verb second position. So the first position could be something else, okay? As usual, it's the joker position, but the fixed information is that the verb is at the second position in the first clause as well in the clause after the connector und, okay? Und also has the effect that you can interchange the order, okay? Something and another thing means like you can interchange the order as well as in English. So I could also put the second clause first and say, ich höre Radio und ich koche eine Suppe, okay? And put the first clause at the second position. So the order of the two clauses in a sentence with a main clause connector doesn't matter, okay? You can interchange them easily. Another aspect regarding und, in my case, for example, we have here the same subject, 2 times ich. If you have the same subject in a sentence with the connector und, you can delete it in the second clause. Okay, so I can say, ich koche eine Suppe und höre Radio. Because of the conjugation and because we used the subject already in the first clause, we can avoid it to repeat it a second time. Okay, so you don't have to repeat it, but you can do so. Okay, so obviously with ich, the sentences are correct 2 times with ich, but it's enough just the first time. Obviously, this is just possible if the subject is the same. Okay, if I have one time, for example, ich, and in the other sentence I would have er, no, you have to obviously mention the new subject if you have different subjects. Okay, this is just possible if the subject is 2 times the same. So this would be und. Let's have a look at oder. Okay, just one aspect I want to add before we come to oder regarding und. If we would have 2 times as well the same verb and the same subject, so let's imagine we have the 2 sentences, ich höre Pop, and the other sentence, ich höre Rock, and we want to connect these sentences. So that's the power of the connectors, to connect 2 sentences. We could do it that way, ich höre Pop und ich höre Rock, very easily, just adding und in between the 2 sentences. As we have here the same subject and the same verb, it's like an enumeration, okay? I'm just mentioning multiple things I'm listening. Pop, rock. Maybe I could mention as well 3, 4 other examples. Pop, rock, classic music, and so on. In these kind of cases, you can avoid to use the subject and verb in the second sentence. Okay, so it would be a correct sentence just to say ich höre Rock und Pop. Okay, so obviously und can be used as well in the enumeration if you mention multiple things. Okay, so a lot of times it applies if you are talking about your favorite stuffs or something like this. So for example, I like, I don't know, bananas, strawberry, apples. Ich mag Erdbeeren, Bananen und Äpfel. Okay, so in these kind of cases, when you just mention multiple things, it's not necessary to repeat all the time the subject and the verb. Okay, if the subject and the verb stays the same, you can cut them. Okay, you do not have to repeat them, so you just add the other option. Okay, so ich höre Rock und Pop. This just as a last aspect regarding und. And we are coming to oder. I will stay with the examples of und because oder is working out the same way. I already can spoiler. Ich koche eine Suppe, ich höre Radio. Again, we want to connect these 2 sentences. In this case with oder. Oder means or. So und means we are doing 2 stuffs at the same time or 2 activities. Oder means one of them, not both. Okay, so either I would cook or I would listen to the radio. Ich koche eine Suppe oder ich höre Radio. But regarding the order, it's the same logic as with und. After oder, first position subject, second position the conjugated verb. Okay, so the first position in general is a joker position. The fixed rule is that in the first sentence the verb is at the second position, and as well in the clause after oder, you have the verb at the second position. That would be the fixed rule. Okay. Again, in this case, we have 2 times the same subject. Okay. So I could cut it and say, ich koche eine Suppe oder höre Radio. Okay. I do not have to repeat the subject. And as well, I can interchange the order of the 2 clauses. Okay, it doesn't matter with which clause I start. Okay, so I could use the radio information at the first position and the soup information at the second position. So I could say, ich höre Radio oder ich koche eine Suppe. Okay, obviously the order of the clauses in a sentence connected with oder doesn't matter. Okay, so basically oder is working out 100% the same way as und. Okay, so therefore you can use it as well in enumeration. If you want to mention multiple options, you can use oder as well. So if we want to connect again the sentence, ich höre Pop, ich höre Rock, this time we don't want to say we listen both, so connecting with und, we want to say I'm listening one or the other one. Okay, so with oder. We can do it just with oder in between, ich höre Pop oder ich höre Rock, or as we have the same subject and the same verb in both sentences, we can cut the subject and verb and just say ich höre Rock oder Pop. Okay, that's without any issue possible. Okay, so this would be und or oder. This is one category of the main clause connectors. The other one would be and as well, this I forgot to mention, in front of oder, never a comma. Okay, in front of oder, we don't use a comma. Same rule as for und. Whilst on the other hand, before aber, always, all the time a comma. Okay, ich koche gern, ich putze nicht gern. I like to cook, I don't like to clean. Okay, let's say we want to connect these sentences, and aber, but, is expressing more or less opposite. Okay, in this case we express, yeah, I like to cook, but I don't like to clean. Okay, so we are expressing a little bit opposite information. How we connect these sentences now in German? We start with the first sentence, stays the same, ich koche gern, and then we add the opposite information, introduced by aber. And as I said, in front of aber, all the time a comma. That's not the case in English. In German, yes. Not all the time the case in English, but in German, yes. So we add the second sentence and we do not change the order. As well, aber has no influence on the order. Aber, after aber, we respect the same main clause order as usual. Okay, so verb second position. Aber ich putze nicht gern. Okay, so the verb stays at the second position and we add the subject normally after aber. So I marked here in orange nicht to express a little bit that aber most of the time expressing kind of an opposite information. Okay, one time yes, the other thing not, or the one thing is good, the other thing is bad. Okay, that would be the idea of aber, but it's working out as but in English. Okay, so this would be one option. In this case, in this example, we could interchange the two sentences. So we could say, ich putze nicht gern, aber ich koche gern. Okay, in this case, it's possible. It's not all the time possible. Okay, this depends on the context. If vice versa, it still makes sense, the sentence. This you just have to try regarding the context if the translation makes sense. In this case, it still makes sense. I don't like to clean, but I like to cook. Okay, no issue regarding this. We can interchange the order. But the order within the single clauses stays the same. Okay, so second position would be the conjugated verb, and all the time in front of aber, we need the comma. Okay. What's not possible is to put aber in front of the sentences. Okay. Aber ich putze nicht gern, ich koche gern, something like this, that's not possible. Okay. Aber has to introduce all the time the second clause. It cannot introduce the first clause of the overall expression. Okay. That's not possible. The overall phrase cannot be introduced by aber. Okay. Second example, also one another hint I would want to point out regarding aber, you cannot delete the subject, even if it's the same. Okay? I cannot say ich koche gern, I cannot say ich putze nicht gern, aber koche gern. Okay? So that's not all the time possible. In this case, it is possible, but it's not all the time possible, like the rule with und oder, where you can all the time delete the subject if it's the same. With aber, it's not working out all the time. Okay, so be careful regarding this. If you try to delete the subject in the aber clause, that's not working out all the time. Okay. And we are coming to denn. Okay, as I said, denn means because. At the A2 level, you will learn another connector, which is really because. Okay, denn is the easier version of the German because. Okay, because denn is not changing the order. As you can see here, denn is giving a reason. Okay, denn is connecting two sentences by saying, okay, we have one fact and we have a reason for this fact. Okay, you could also say we have a consequence and we have a reason for this consequence. In our example, ich bleibe zu Hause, I stay at home is the first sentence. Second sentence, ich bin krank, I'm sick. So we want to relate the sentences saying, okay, I'm staying at home because I'm sick, okay? So we have the matter of fact or the consequence that I stay at home, and the reason for that is because I'm sick, okay? So we're giving a reason for the fact or for the consequence. This we can do in German by the connector denn. Also denn, as aber, all the time you have to need a comma, use a comma in front of denn. Ich bleibe zu Hause, denn ich bin krank. Okay? Again, then has no influence on the order, as I said, so that's why you have the verb afterwards at the second position. Usually you put the subject at the first position. Okay? So what's not possible is in this case to mix up the order and say something like, denn krank bin ich. No, okay? You put the subject at the first position after the connector then, okay? And the verb stays at the second position. In this case, it depends on the context. You cannot interchange the order, okay? So it would make no sense to say in German, ich bin krank, denn ich bleibe zu Hause. This would be, I'm sick because I'm staying at home. That's an odd relation, okay? You cannot, would be a little bit strange if you're getting sick because you're staying at home. Of course, it's possible, but it's a rare case, let's say. Normally, you don't want to express this. You want to express this the other way around. You're staying at home because you're sick, okay? That's why then should be in front of the reason, not in front of the consequence or the fact, okay? Then should be in front of the reason. But that's a big difference between German and English. It's not possible to put the reason at the first position. So you cannot say, denn ich bin krank, because I'm sick, I'm staying at home. Denn ich bin krank, ich bleibe zu Hause. No, that's not possible in German. In German, you have to mention first the consequence, the fact, then the reason for the consequence, okay? So then is all the time the second clause, okay? Not the first clause of the whole phrase, okay? That's important regarding then. And as I mentioned, the order after then, first position would be the subject, second position would be the conjugated verb. And after that, you're adding all the complements of the sentence, okay? So this would be then. And remember, after, or not after, before then, all the time a comma. So in a summary, before und, oder, never a comma, before denn, aber, always a comma, and then, aber are all the time in front of the second clause. Okay, so this were the four Hauptsatzkonnektoren, main clause connectors, the whole theory. We will apply it now in some exercises. Kommen wir zu den Übungen. Okay, also, wir haben einen Lückentext, text with gaps. Ihr müsst den Connector wählen. You have to choose the connector. Es regnet, es regnet nicht. Also, ihr müsst und, oder, aber, denn wählen. Okay? Ein Connector. You have to choose und, oder, aber, or then. Es ist kalt, es schneit. Regnen, to rain, schneien, to snow. So I'm adding a little bit words for the weather. Wir haben keine Katze. Wir haben einen Hund. Du gehst früh ins Bett. Du musst früh aufstehen. Okay? Also, macht eine Pause. Pause the video if necessary. I will provide the solutions immediately. Und die Lösungen? Es regnet oder es regnet nicht. So I tried to point it out very clearly. It's raining or it's not raining. So it can't rain, at least at the same location. It cannot rain and rain at the same time. So it's impossible that it's raining and that it's not raining at the same time at the same location. That's why I try to point out very clearly that you have to use oder, okay? Because with und, you could not connect it because that's impossible, okay? And you have the hint, there's no comma, so just und or oder would be possible just regarding the comma rule. Es ist kalt und es schneit. This, for example, is possible to connect with und. It's cold and it's snowing at the same time. That's why we can use und. Wir haben keine Katze, aber wir haben einen Hund. Okay? So, we are expressing a little bit of opposite information. Okay, we don't have a cat, so don't, but we do have a dog. Okay, that's the opposite. That's why we use aber. We don't give a reason, then is not applying, and because of the comma, we have to use aber or then. Du gehst früh ins Bett, denn du musst früh aufstehen. You're going early to bed because you have to get up early. We're giving a reason. Why are you going early to bed? Because you have to get up early. Okay, that's why then would apply. There's no opposite information in it. We just give a reason. That's why then is applying. Okay, so this just regarding the translation and the use cases of und, oder, aber, denn. Now you have to connect two sentences by yourself. Okay, so you have two sentences and have to connect them with the connector I've mentioned afterwards. Also, ihr fahrt nach München, ihr besucht das Oktoberfest. Connector und. Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung? Ihr fahrt nach München und ihr besucht das Oktoberfest. So the ihr is not necessary to mention with und, but you can if you want so. First position subject, second position verb. After the und, we have the same order. First position subject, if we repeat it, second position verb. Afterwards, all the rest. Ich esse ein Eis, ich esse einen Joghurt, Connector oder. Und die Lösung? Ich esse ein Eis oder einen Joghurt. In that case, you can repeat the subject and the verb if you want so, as it's the same subject and verb, it's not necessary. Okay? So you could go as well without ich and esse in the second sentence. Nächstes Beispiel. Die Jacke ist teuer. Ich kaufe die Jacke. Connector aber. Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung? Die Jacke ist teuer, aber ich kaufe die Jacke. Okay? Jacket is expensive, but I buy it. Okay? We're expressing a little bit contrary, opposite information. Yes, it is expensive, but still I will buy it. Okay? So, first sentence stays the same, and second one stays as well the same. We just put aber in between. Letztes Beispiel. Sie geht in die Bibliothek. Sie muss lernen. Connector denn. Ihr seid dran. Und die Lösung? Sie geht in die Bibliothek, denn sie muss lernen. She's going to the library because she needs or she has to study. Okay? So, we're giving a reason. Why is she going to the library? Because she needs or she has to study. After then, same order, first position subject, second position conjugated verb. Okay? All right. So these were already all the example sentence, and in this context, as usual, I hope it was possible to enjoy the content as well a little bit. And in this context, tschüss, bis bald.